indicate regions with the largest in-migration flow. The red chords represent those with largest out-migration flow. And in particular, for secondary and tertiary educated migration, you can see the yellow chords that signifies regions with high number of both in-migrants and out-migrants. So, origin and destination flow for primary educated migrants, the left graph, show that rural regions in Java Island, the red part of this circle, account for the majority of out-migration flows. However, each rural region show a different pattern in the out-migration direction. Out-migration from rural central Java shows more dispersed patterns of destination regions, while the outflows from rural West Java and rural East Java are mainly directed to their metropolitan counterparts. Moreover, Jakarta and Outer Jakarta show their dominance as destination regions for migration in this education level. These two regions mainly attract in-migrants from rural areas in Java, but it's also noticeable that they gain primary educated migrants from other urban and metropolitan regions in the country. The migration pattern of the secondary educated population, the circle graph in the middle, show a bit different pattern since rural regions are no longer the only prominent source of out-migration. Here you can see the region with yellow chord, Jakarta, not only attracts a high share of secondary educated migrants, but simultaneously also sends a considerable proportion of migrants with similar education background, and it mainly sent towards its surrounding region. The last graph, the right one, shows the origin destination pattern of tertiary educated migration, and it is shown that metropolitan and urban areas become the prominent sending regions. This situation can be attributed to the concentration of tertiary education system in such area. The top sending regions like Jakarta or Central Java, urban Central Java, are home to a great number of reputable universities in the country. The importance of rural area as destination area of tertiary educated migrants can also be observed in the graph. Here, rural North Sumatra become one of the top destination, and also while it's highlighted in the graph, in total, nearly a fourth of tertiary educated migrants move toward rural regions outside Java Island. This situation may be affected by the regional decentralization policy, followed by the proliferation of new districts that offer wide working opportunities in local civil services for those with tertiary education qualification. Also, in recent years, Indonesia government have also launched higher incentive for specially skilled workers, such as teacher or medical staff, to work in less developed regions. The follow-up analysis look into underlying factors associated with interaction between origin and destination regions for each level of education. I run OLS regression results, and OLS regression and results show that both predictors related to regions' physical connectedness, which are regional contiguity and regional connectivity, have significant effects on the spatial interaction at any level of education. Migrants tend to move to nearby and directly connected regions, and this pattern is found to be more pronounced as education increases. It is also shown that the effect of lifetime migrant stock is statistically significant across three education groups. However, the effect seems to be more pronounced in the lower level of education. Lifetime migrant stock association between origin and destination areas can give an overview of social networks and cultural ties between regions. It can be said that for the low-educated ones, the presence of social networks has a major role in their migration, and it can work as a complementary to their limited human capital while facing obstacles during their migration processes, such as financial problem, living arrangement, or community integration. Also, we have predictors of the ratio of employment rate that illustrate relative working opportunities between origin and destination area. This predictor has a positive effect on the primary and tertiary educated migration. However, it has a negative effect on origin-destination interaction within the secondary education migration. The different direction of these predictors' effects can be partially attributed to the mixed motive of migration by this education group. While pursuing tertiary education migration for pursuing tertiary education are not as common as economic related or family related motive among the young migrants in Indonesia, this motive has been a prominent feature in migration flows of secondary educated migrants aged 18 to 19 years old that move to regions that provide access to a reputable higher education institution. Such destination regions may have lower employment rates than migrants' origin due to their higher share of unemployed student population. The last predictor I use in the regression is the ratio of non-agricultural workers, and it shows significant effects on primary and secondary educated migration. The situation can give an overview of the migration structure at the lower education level. It entails less urbanized origin areas and more industrialized destination regions. For the tertiary education migration, it can be said that the special interaction within this migration system are more likely to be found between regions with a similar development level. To sum up, spatial structure of youth migrations have varied among different educational background. Rural regions act as prominent sources for primary and secondary educated migration, while tertiary educated migrants are mainly originated from metropolitan and urban areas. Also, more dispersed patterns of origin and destination pairs can be observed within the tertiary educated migration flows. A noticeable pattern is shown in the substantial proportion of tertiary educated in migration toward rural regions, and this situation can indicate the pattern of the concentration of the highly educated migrants and the situation of less centralized knowledge-based sectors across regions. The last point that I want to highlight is migration should not only be viewed as a physical movement of individuals, but also human capital flows across regions. Thus, the discussion of the education-specific migration flow show how different factors work distinctively in pushing and pulling less educated and highly educated young migrants. Such information can be useful for local and national government for designing social policy addressing human capital development at regional level. I think, yes, that's the end of my presentation from today. Thank you for your attention. I return the screen to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Malang Masama, and your presentation shows some very interesting patterns of migrants by different degree of educational attainment. So we look forward to further discussion of all the presentation. Now, last but not least, now I'd like to invite Dr. Dr. Niyom Silpa from Mahidol University to give the presentation. And the title of the presentation is Irregular and Voluntary Western Migrants in Thailand, Challenges and Responses. Now, please.
Thank you. Good morning. As I was asked to submit the digital file, so I would like to present my presentation with that recorded file. I would like to share the screen.
Hello, I am Sakkalin Niyom Silpa from Institute for Population and Social Research, Mahidol University. I would like to discuss the issue of irregular and vulnerable Western migrants in Thailand, challenges and responses. This project is a collaboration between me and Ajahn Suripon Phanphung. Dr. Suripon Phanphung was former head of the Institute. Today, I will talk about the increasing temporary migration of European migrants in Thailand, the challenges of irregular migrants, the impact of COVID-19, and also policy implications to this kind of problems and challenges. The information from for this project is gathered from in-depth interview of 33 European migrants in Thailand, including high-skilled migrants, married migrants, entrepreneurs, retirees, and some irregular migrants, and also from data survey and secondary data that we have collected. During the past decade, we have seen big increase of European visitors and migrants in Thailand because of the low cost of living in Thailand, also Thailand exotic culture from European perspective. Also, the Thai government has relaxed immigration policies by introducing new kind of visa that attract European migrants. For example, 6-month tourist visa in 2015, 10-year multiple entry visa for long stay tourists in 2016. And also we have marriage visa, student visa, and also retirement visa aimed at European migrants. There are quite a number of different groups of irregular European migrants, including visa overstayers. Normally, many tourists come to Thailand and they don't extend the 3-month stay. Sometimes they overstay the visa, so they become visa overstayers, and they put on blacklist, and they could be deported. Some digital nomads. Thailand has attracted a large number of digital nomads in Bangkok, Phuket, and Chiang Mai. And these people, they work in Thailand, but they don't have the work permits. Sometimes they were arrested. Foreign teachers who work in private tutorial schools, many of them are hired on the short-term basis and they don't have work contracts. So also some property agents which are not allowed by some Thai law and regulations. Financial consultants, some of them work for multinational companies as a consultant without work permits. Retirees who fail to extend their retirement visa in Thailand, former marriage migrants who has a family breakup and they stay on and they cannot return to their homeland in Europe because of long stay in Thailand, they get used to living here. Also, some criminals. Thailand has a lot of criminals as part of the transnational organized crime networks on drug trafficking, human trafficking, for example. There are many problems and challenges of irregular Western migrants, like political challenges, economic challenges, and socio-cultural challenges. In terms of political challenges, Thai visa regulations are not designed to facilitate temporary mobility of foreigners. And foreign visitors to Thailand, they are required to report to the immigration office every 3 months. If some of them fail to report to the authority, they're going to have some problems. But during COVID-19, many of them could not do that. Some married migrants and retirees, also they have to renew their visa every year, but some could not travel to the immigration office within that time frame, so they become irregular. Some foreigners also become overstayers because they could not travel out of Thailand every 3 months. For tourist visa, some of them would like to stay longer. So every 3 months, they have to travel outside of Thailand in order to renew the visa. But some of them could not do that because of travel restrictions or because of many logistic problems. Also, the Thai work permit process is very long. Some cases, they wait for work permit for months. Some wait for over a year. So that's why they keep on working without work permits and become irregular. Also, if they don't have work permits, they don't have driving license, they could not open a bank account or own a car. So they have a lot of difficulties. And also, in terms of economic challenges, if they don't have work permits, then they could not have Social Security, and they could have some financial problems if they become ill or if they have accidents. And many retirees in Thailand, they have health insurance in Europe, not in Thailand, and they could not transfer that kind of system to Thailand. And if they become ill and they couldn't travel to Europe, then they're going to have big health and economic problems. In terms of social cultural challenges, many illegal migrants said that they become drug or alcohol addicts. So they run out of money and become irregular. Some of them have difficulties in terms of languages, and also they could not integrate in Thai society because of misunderstandings or because of the language barriers. And also the Thai government introduced double policy in national parks and state premises, and many are awkward to pay double pricing in that premises. And also we don't have the, some of them don't have the social protection and health care system if they are irregular. After the pandemic of COVID-19, we also have additional problems to foreigners, especially irregular migrants. The extension of visa is a problem. They could not travel to the immigration office, and the online system is unreliable and causes problems. And immigration officers, sometimes they don't help them as they should by providing good advice. Some of them have long interpretation of the requirements. Also, foreigners, some of them could not open a bank account during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they don't have money. Many foreigners don't have access to vaccines. The Thai government gives priority to Thais over foreigners. So a lot of retirees, they have health risks, but could not have the vaccine access. And also many prejudice attitudes and also discrimination practices in Thailand. You can see that there are some signposts in front of some shops and also even some local temples saying that foreigners are not allowed because they're afraid of the COVID-19. Some European visitors to Phuket, they are stranded there after the COVID-19 and they have to go to temple to find a place to rest because they don't have money to pay to the hotel. Also, in Samui Island, we have long queue of foreigners who are trying to extend their visa after the lockdown in Thailand, and it causes problems and annoyance in many areas in Thailand. Also, apart from this kind of challenges, we also have a big problem of homeless Westerners in Thailand. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, a number of Europeans, they become homeless in big cities in Thailand, and they don't have assistance from their consular offices, only the Thai NGOs which can provide help to them. What are the implications of all these problems and challenges? I think we should address the problems and come up with some policy intervention measures. For example, providing accidental and health insurance to foreigners. This requirement may also be part of the visa policy. We also should promote multicultural society in Thailand to increase local integration of foreigners and visitors in Thailand. And also, we should have some kind of collaboration between local government, NGOs, and also the Thai authorities to have the welfare system and access to public services to visitors in local areas in Thailand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very interesting presentation. We often heard about the irregular migrants from developing countries in developed countries, and this is a topic which has been intensively studied in the field. But I think the study on the irregular migrants from developing countries is still not not often seen. So this is yeah. A good contribution to the field, I think. Okay, now let me thank 4 speakers again for the excellent presentations. And now I would like to turn over to Dr. Henry Akwadi for you to pick up the questions from the audience and then ask the 4 speakers to answer the questions.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Yu. Thanks to all participants, Dr. Wu, Dr. Jam Pak Lai, Dr. Mala, and Dr. Niam Silva. Very interesting presentation for all of you. Now it's time for a question and answer, and I read in chat room. We have 2 questions from the first one is from Ms. Diah Kartika, and the second from Ms. Yuniar. I will read the question, and I hope you can answer the question clearly and maybe more elaborate data, because it is a very interesting issues. From Diah Kartika, on the other hand, Thai migrants who feel comfortable in a Malaysian environment are very high, but only a few says that Malaysian can be trusted. Maybe you can shed some light on how this counterproductive thing can happen. It's time for you.
Okay, I think that's to me. The question is to me. So thank you very much, Diah Kartika, for the very interesting question. I think it's something that we also thought about that. First thing is that I think it's no question that why most of migrants feel comfortable to live or work in Malaysia, because as the main reason they choose this destination as workplace, because the similarity or the feeling of closeness with Malaysian people, because of the same religion and same culture and similar looking things like that. So the quantitative results and qualitative results also confirm that they adapted or they adjust to life in Malaysia. So in Malaysian society is very well. But then in terms of why the trust, when we ask about how much they, I think the question is that do you think that most Malaysian people can be trusted? And the response is that moderate, high level, and then moderate level, and then low level. So I think one thing is maybe about the way that I presented that the percentage of the low level 8% is that the percentage of migrants who reported that they think that most Malaysian people can be trusted at high level. So only at 8%. But actually the number of migrants who said that they trust Malaysian people at the moderate level is quite high. It's about 70%. So if we look at number of the figures of at moderate level and high level, that's the number is not quite low. But we also thought about this and try to look at the qualitative data as well. Although it's not it doesn't show in the quantitative results that in terms of discrimination or exploitation, we saw low level. But in the stories that we learn from the qualitative in-depth interviews, that there are some migrants who share with us the experience of being exploited or cheated by employers as well. So I think that might explain. And I think when we did the survey, we did quantitative and qualitative at the same time. So we didn't have a chance to sort of look at the quantitative result first and then bring that issue to further ask for explanation in the qualitative. That's I think that's one limitation of the study. But thank you for the observation.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, the second question is from Ms. Yunia, still for Dr. Are. It is interesting to know why the respondents get very less involvement in social activities in the community they living in.
Thanks, Yunia, for the question. What we get? Okay, so what we get from? Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what we get from the qualitative to explain this, why they have low participation in social activities in Malaysian society, is that the point is that because of the busy work schedule, so they have to. Most of the migrants in our sample work in restaurant or Tom Yum restaurant or Thai restaurant in Malaysia, and if you used to visit Kuala Lumpur or in other cities in Malaysia, the Thai restaurant it's very common that they open 24 hours. So and the employees take shifts to work in the restaurant. And working for longer than 10 hours, 12 hours is very common. So they have very less time to take a rest and no time to do other activities other than working and then come back to take a rest. And these Thai migrants, they most of them, majority of them do work under they have no documents, they have no work permit, and they have passport. Usually they have passport, but they have to sort of come back to Thailand every month to stamp the passport, so to renew their visa, not the visa, their eligibility to be in Malaysia society. So they're busy with work schedule, and then if they have time, they have to come back to return and then go back to Malaysia again. Yeah. So, and I think the second point might be some shown from qualitative data as well, that we see some migrants who show that they feel of being inferior in staying in Malaysia. So feeling of being inferior might prevent them to mingle or to do activities with Malaysian people. That could partly explain it.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, we only have two questions. Maybe I would like to invite the moderator, Mr. Zhu. May you have a question for all presenters?
Okay, so we don't have any more questions from the audience in the chat box, right?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, then yeah, I do have some questions for the speaker, all the speakers actually. But let me first ask the other three speakers who have not got the question from the audience. Each of you a question. So for Dr. Wu, you provide a very interesting analysis on the migration patterns to different provinces, so by educational levels. So I just wonder whether you have done or whether you have thought of doing some analysis on the migration to different size, to the cities of different sizes by the educational levels. I guess I mean actually from your result. Or you can actually already speculate that that there will be some kind of patterns if you do the analysis by the size of different by the urban hierarchy. So you know, so I just suspect that higher educational the migrants with higher educational attainment may go to you know, larger cities, for example. So this is something I like you to share your thoughts with us. And the second question to the presentation on the special structure of youth migration in Indonesia. Again, this is a very, there is some very interesting findings that because you showed us the pattern where highly educated people are leaving Jakarta, leaving these large cities, which is sort of you know, there's in sharp contrast to what we have seen now in China, because the highly educated people actually now still are attracted by very large cities in Chinese in China. So I just wonder, and you actually provided some explanations why people, you know, move out of the Jakarta. Now I have two questions. So first of all, could you please clarify whether Jakarta, in terms of net migration now, it is already negative for the you know, the people with tertiary education. So that means more people leave Jakarta rather than enter Jakarta. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, you cited some of the government incentives as a reason why some people leave, you know, large city to some neighboring areas, or even some further areas further away. So could you please also provide let me know whether there are some other factors which drives people out of Jakarta, from, for example, whether high housing price is also a reason, things like that, right? And also, if you could you please tell me when you say when you actually your analysis shows that the proximity and the connectivity to the cities is also an important reason, important factor affecting where they go. And could you please give me a sense how far they move away from Jakarta, for example? Is that the region still with the part of the metropolitan Jakarta? Yeah, so that's the question for you. And then lastly, I like to ask a question about the illegal and vulnerable Westerners, migrants in Thailand. Since this is a very interesting phenomenon, and one of the perspective I would like to look at it is, I wonder whether you have made some comparison between the characteristics of these Western irregular migrants in Thailand with the general characteristics of their respective home countries' population. I think this would be interesting to see. So I wonder whether you have done any analysis on that. So these are my questions. So I would like to listen to your observations. Thank you.
Okay, it's time you for Dr. Wu, 3 minutes, and also Dr. Chambaklai and Mala. Oh no, Mala and Dr. Niam Silva. Please, it's.
Thank you for the comment from Professor Tu. And I have mentioned in the presentation, actually there are some data limitation of the how to say, the macro simple data from the census. So the problem is there. I mean, from the question of the from the census, they didn't provide more detailed information about the origin and destination, especially for the origin. Origin is only from which province, and for the destination, we only can find which province they are went, and which they are go to rural or urban area. But we cannot go to the lower level of, for example, which cities or which district level. I mean, this migration goal. But we actually also work on the urbanization process of the model. I'm now trying to look into ways to dealing with this problem. So one is to integrate with other data sources like the floating population survey of China. And another way I'm thinking is to classify the province into different groups by like the GDP per capita or some other ways to see whether the migrations will be will be different. The destination will be different by educational development to different development level of the areas of all those province. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Dr. Mala.
I think
next.
Yep. Okay, so I would like to answer a question from Dr. Yu. So, yeah, it is also interesting. I found it interesting, like people leave Jakarta, but I think from the pattern that I show, most people leave Jakarta to move to the surrounding area, the outer part of Jakarta. So it is a strategy of accessing more affordable housing, but in fact they still work in Jakarta. So they have affordable housing within commuting distance to their workplace in Jakarta. So, and also this phenomenon can also be seen in other metropolitan regions in Indonesia. People are now tend to choose to live in like the outer part of the city, the big cities, because it's more affordable to buy houses, to own houses, and but they still, because all the economic activities still center in the big cities, so they can still commute to the cities to access their work. And so if we only look at the net migration, yes, Jakarta has negative net migration for tertiary educated migrants in particular, but they still gain a lot of secondary and primary educated migrants, because the growth of informal sectors is still increasing rapidly, and those people usually doesn't have access to own houses, even if in their surrounding area. So they stay in the Jakarta, and maybe they rent houses, small houses, or they can only be able to rent houses in Jakarta. And so, yeah, why people leave Jakarta? I think because the cost of living, and also like I think the most clear explanation for this one is housing, affordability of housing in Jakarta. People which more capital will prefer to live out in the outskirts region of the city. Can I also answer one question that directed to me in the chat box? There's a question from Reiko. So she asked me about how mobility by education level change over time using lifetime migration questions. Unfortunately, I haven't explored that the migration pattern using the lifetime migration questions, but I also look at the Census 2000 patterns by using the same question, research migration, and there is no substantial change in the primary and secondary educated migration, but yes, tertiary educated migration has increased substantially, and there are more dispersed patterns. More people move to rural area compared in 2010 compared to the census in 2000. I think that's all my response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's all of the question have been answered.
No, I think there is still one question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Dr. Niam Silpa. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. Please, Doctor. It's time you.
Thank you. Previously, I and Dr. Suripon Panpung, we have conducted a research project on Thai migrants in Europe before this project, and but we found different results because most Thai migrants in Europe, they are married migrants. There are for a small number of Thai professionals who work in Europe, but mostly they are married migrants. But most married migrants also work there as well. So in terms of economic challenges, they don't have big challenges because most of them could find work easily if they want to. And mostly they work in order to send some money to their family in Thailand. For social challenges, they have a lot of problems because most of them only have secondary high school education level. So they have language barriers, and they also don't have much experience about European culture. So they have difficulties in local integration. And most of them stay in a small circle, and they socialize with Thai migrants there mostly, and immediate family members. And also, if they have problems with their family, like during breakup, then they have difficulties and they have to return to Thailand. Some of them also have experienced abuses and exploitation in Eastern Europe, for example. Some of them were exploited as workers instead of wives. In many cases, they have some legal problems, and they have to use the Thai networks to help them. Also, we also study return migrants, Thai migrants who return to Thai migrants in Europe who return to Thailand, and we have some interview to these people, and we found out that most Thai migrants, Indian, at the end of the day, they would like to come back to Thailand. Despite their legal status, although they are European citizens already, they would like to come back. And also, after retirement, they would bring their family members with them, like their husband. After retirement, they would come to stay in Thailand. And their European husbands also have problems in terms of local integration because they don't speak Thai, or they have limited social circles among expats in a rural area. But in big cities, they have less of a problem because we have extensive networks of expats in big cities like Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Phuket, and Pattaya. So because of, if you compare European migrants in Thailand and Thai migrants in Europe, they are different groups. They have different purposes. They have different behavior. So they may have different challenges. I have not compared these two groups yet, but in the future maybe. Thank you for your question.
Okay, again, thank you for all presenters and all participants who have actively participate in this session, and keep the spirit to following the next session until the end of this conference. To close the session, Dr. Yu, it is you can make some notes or something. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next session.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you very much to all the speakers and to our moderator and to all the audience who attended our session. And I think it's a very stimulating section. And thank you again. And one last question: whether the technical people have already taken a photo of all the speakers and moderators. I think this is required. So if I just remind you to do that, and now it's time for the next session. Okay, if there's no other outstanding issues, then we just stop here. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sawasdee krap.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.